Next up, don't miss Keys to Success, connecting steel design and fabrication with Endres Manufacturing.
Okay, welcome everyone. Glad to present to you today, and we have a success story for us today with SDS2. And to present that success story with Endres Manufacturing, I have with me today Max Udak, who is a project manager for Endres Manufacturing. Max, welcome. Would you go ahead, like to give the audience a little bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, my name is Max Udak. I'm project manager, like you said, here at Endres Manufacturing. So Endres in general, we're a multi-million dollar structural and miscellaneous steel fabricator. Biggest thing is that we do both. So typically you'll get only miscellaneous or only structural. That's kind of our big selling point. In addition to that, we're 100 years old, so we'll be turning 100 next year. It's a family-owned business in its fourth generation, but we adopted SDS2 almost about a decade ago, and it's been going pretty well so far.
Mhm. Okay. Very good. Very good. And for those of you who don't know myself, my name is David Zapka. I'm a product manager for our prefabrication services here at ALLPLAN. I've been with the company for quite a few years, doing everything from customer success, support, training, all through sales, product management. Now I lead a team of a number of us here that focus on our prefabrication areas. So uh, Max, you kind of gave a little bit of a rundown there of Endres Manufacturing. It's a company that, as you and I started to talk a little bit more and more, I really started to enjoy kind of the story of the history of Endres Manufacturing. It's quite unique, I would say. Uh, the the entrance to your plant or shop there is up in the upper right corner in that picture there. So kind of a tip of the cap to the Bavarian heritage here, huh?
Yeah, so we're in Wanakee, Wisconsin. It's also my town where I live, so it's cool. Get to represent my town. But yeah, we've been around for just about 100 years. The first shop was actually just a couple blocks up the road, over on 3rd and West Street, and it's pretty funny. So nowadays it's actually a barber shop. It's where I get my hair cut. So it's a full circle there. But we adopted that Bavarian theme. I don't know, quite some time ago. It was kind of a thing where we're trying to get the whole town of Wanakee to adopt it and kind of make a kitschy travel thing. And there were only two businesses that did it, both on the bookends of town, and we were one of them. So it stuck. So we also have our goat park out front, which has become a staple of the community. It's kind of funny you say that. You're a giant steel fabrication plant doing multi-million dollar projects, and you can walk outside and go pet a goat. But it's awesome. We're unique.
Okay, very good, very good. And some of the projects you've worked on are quite unique, pretty neat projects as I've looked through some of the projects that you've done. So uh, apparently you must be connected into a university there. You do a lot of work with the University of Wisconsin up there.
Yep. So we do a lot of education, and that's from UW system all the way down to local school districts. So, I mean, we've built dozens and dozens of high schools around the state of Wisconsin, middle schools, elementary, et cetera. Um, then also we do, just about anything. We kind of specialize in the weird and strange, I would say. So a lot of the harder projects where you get a lot of the weird, crazy, curvy stuff, very, very difficult, highly geometrical buildings. That's kind of our bread and butter and what we like to participate in. Because like I said, we do structural and miscellaneous. It's a good way to tie all that together.
Okay, very good, very good. So let's talk a little bit then, kind of get a little bit of an idea who you are, a little bit of an idea of who Endres Manufacturing is, and let's talk a little bit about how you at Endres Manufacturing there utilize SDS2. Tell us a little bit about your processes, a little bit more in depth on how SDS2 kind of helps and plays into your processes here at Endres.
Right. So it's ingrained all the way from the time we get the bid, basically to project delivery. So starting off, internal. We actually have a team of 8 detailers here in house, both at Wanakee and then our facility up in Arlington, which is about 20 minutes north of here. They tend to handle a lot of the middle-sized projects, a lot of renovations, a lot of two-story buildings, that sort of thing. Um, then also on my side of things, I'm a project manager, so I handle both internal and external detailing, anywhere from teams of 24 to 200 people on larger scale projects. Um, More or less, we start off just getting everything roughed in, just like any other fabricator would. Start getting into the nitty gritty with connection design, and we'll kind of get into that later. Um, Once all that's ironed out, shop sequencing, that's a huge thing. I can't stress that enough. We tend to actually do that on the back end because a lot of times from a seal erector, you'll get just a marked up PDF of your drawings. So SDS2 with the sequencing functions makes that extremely easy. We get all that exported into Tekla. EPM for our ERP system, try to get that all aligned. I will say one of the biggest things for us is automation in general. So we actually have 2 Python X machines. We have one up in Arlington and one here in Wanakee. There's a lifeblood of our organization. I mean, they're running almost 24/7. And once it leaves there, it's a lot of hands-on fabrication, but they're getting a lot of the prep work done for our guys. We also have our Bentech Dragon that basically functions very, very similar to our Python, where instead of cutting large structural machines, we're cutting just small pipes and tubes for our rails and ladders. That's actually pretty significantly optimized our ladder production. Now we're able to just quickly fit everything up because we can pre-cut our holes for our rungs, change all of our welds entirely. All that's possible because SDS2, I mean, we use it because of the miscellaneous functions. Like I said, we are structural and miscellaneous. So yes, we need to be able to detail the giant, large W beams, but also I need to be able to get into really, really finite details with guardrails and stairs and ladders. And just the fact that it does both and it does both very, very well, it's very helpful.
Okay, very good. I'd like to add to that, but I think you did such a good job of describing everything out there that gives us a really good idea of how you're using SDS2, how we communicate from the detailing side of it in SDS2, and then we are producing all those files as Max described to feed those Python X machines and the Bentech machine and whatever else others may have in their shops as well. But like you said, it's all about that automation, making the shop as efficient as possible. So that's very good. And then give us a little bit more, told us a little bit about how SDS2 fits in that process, but what are the benefits that you gain from all that automation we talked about and the functionality within SDS2? How does that benefit Endres Manufacturing?
Yeah, so obviously time saving, and that goes with just about any automation. There's always realistic automation where you want to cut out those manual processes that are repetitive that nobody wants to do. And that's a lot of what the Python is doing. It's a lot of what the Bentech is doing. That allows us to allocate our manpower to things that are meaningful for employees, and SDS2 enables that. As far as just the shop in general, the relationship between a 3D model and a 2D drawing in SDS2 is so strong. So one of the things I love is you can take any section cut in any drawing, and I know for a fact that I just have that view saved and ready to go in 3D whenever a fabricator needs it. So like I mentioned earlier, we do really complex and crazy curve stuff all the time. And as you can imagine, trying to communicate that on a 2D drawing is very, very difficult. So that's where things like the 3D model come in handy. And I'm able to quickly, whether it's export an IFC for the shop, just of that member and save that somewhere for them to view, or have them come into my office, even walk out onto their floor and help them through a detail that might be just a little bit confusing just based on the geometry of the part. That's invaluable. And then also personally as a project manager, I'm heavily involved in the BIM side of things, and that's just continuing to grow as VDC teams at contractors continue to grow. The level of detail that everyone wants seems to be increasing more and more and more. And early on, it was basically just rough stick models. And now it seems like we're getting into the nitty gritty of welds, especially because we do a lot of work in the industrial sector. And from my background previously in automation, your trying to fit every tiny little small part into a very, very, complex machine package. So when you have a lot of piping and automated machinery trying to fit into your structural platform, it starts to matter where the welds are, where your kickers are, all that can interrupt process. So all of that's super helpful. The other thing is, finishes. That was a huge problem for us in general. Just there's so many different finishes out there in terms of special paints, galvanizing, etc. I believe in SDSU 2024, you guys kind of updated and revised that, and it allows us to, very, very quickly isolate and designate finishes down to paint level, and that all gets exported into Tekla and has reduced errors there. Um, Overall, I think it's just making production go smoothly, quicker, and honestly easier.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Great summary again. So I would like to point out the images that we're showing on the PowerPoint here are all images that of buildings or structures that Endres Manufacturing has actually built and detailed using SDS2. So this one was a pretty cool image here of Lambeau Field. For those of you who may not know, Lambeau Field is the home of the Green Bay Packers. So American football team in the NFL here in the United States. So very visible structure that many people would see on a very regular basis. So pretty neat there to be able to say that, some of these structures like that are detailed on SDS2 and built by SDS2 customers. Yeah. And then looking to, the future a little bit here and what's coming with SDS2. One of the things you and I've talked about, Max, is just connecting engineering to detailing closer. And so within the last couple of years, we have developed a workflow with a structural analysis format or SAF file that allows us to transfer models and information very tightly with SIA, which is our analysis product. Tell me a little bit about what excites you about that, the possibilities and the potentials of that type of workflow and implementing that for you there at Endres Manufacturing?
Yeah, so just in my time at Endres alone, I've seen the need for delegated design, increase exponentially. When it comes to steel connections, you think a lot of the benefit on the front end would be working directly with the EOR and designing the connections that are going to make their way into the contract documents. But as more and more connections become delegated, that's getting done after the fact. And we're typically responsible for sending calculations, designs, everything to the engineer while also making sure everything is detailed on time, which as the scope of delegated design continues to grow, it continues to be a problem. I've already gotten a couple bites on this from some engineers, so I'm excited to start implementing this. I think the biggest pull for me is as they're actively designing connections, I can use that, save those as standard connections, throw those in the model, just speed up the process on our end instead of waiting for that PDF lag of where I'm getting design calcs sent to me. All of a sudden, I have to now go in and update the member ends of every single beam in the model. It would be really, really nice to just cut out 2-3 weeks of a workflow and just give that time back to the contractor in the shop floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're also looking at different processes here. So ESTA modeling or model-based estimating is something you're looking at, and then load planning as well. You've looked at our load planning solution to sequence on actual loading based on what can actually fit and the geometry of things that can fit on a trailer. Tell me a little bit about those processes as you look to implement those with SDS2.
Yeah, so load planning is a big future goal for us here, hoping to get everything up and running next year. But we own all of our own trailers, so we obviously control the geometry of the trailer, and that's where load planning shines. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the demos of it online, but basically you go in, you enter all the geometry of the trailers, you load the IFC or the SDS2 model from your working file and your shop and erector sequences. You can also sequence in load planning, which is nice. basically use that to fill out trailers. You also get stack instructions for your guys, so you can use that to dictate part order of what you're sending through the shop. Helps with cut lists. I think it's something that we definitely underutilize, and it's something that I'd like to implement next year.
Yeah, very cool. And then finally, to finish things off here, so this is our release event, and so some of the big things to talk about here in SDS2 2026. As you and I prepared for this recording, I could visually and verbally see and hear the excitement in your voice and in your body language as we talk through some of these topics and what they might bring to Endres Manufacturing. So elaborate for me a little bit more on some of these points that we have listed out here. Of course, it's not everything that's in the 2026 release. These were just some of the high points for you specifically in Endres Manufacturing. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was really exciting to see. So thanks for showing me that yesterday. Honestly, speed and workflow, that's the biggest thing for detailers. So the UI, that total overhaul, especially in drawing editor, I can't even begin to explain to you how much time that's going to save just with the drawing panel and not hitting your keyboard shortcuts and going through the pop-up menu just to open up different details, just having everything nested. It's extremely beneficial, and that's going to save a lot of time just in navigating on a large structural job. I think also just the BIM benefits. I know you guys are big on BIM Plus, and that's coming out, the ERP management system. I'd like to take a look at that as well when that goes out. But also, I've actually had a decent chunk of issues with SDS2 and exporting IFCs, just due to ABM numbers changing. And now that they actually stick with the steel member for the life of the project, I can't begin to emphasize enough how much that helps our erectors and contractors, because they'll actually go in and Revit, Navisworks, etc., and basically just tag parts with on-site, erected, etc. And every time I was sending those out, I was wiping tags, and it was causing issues. So it's good to see those improvements. That's going to help workflows a ton. The custom profiles thing you guys pulled up as well, that was pretty slick. So obviously we do a ton of stairs here, and stair nosings are a thing, and they always cause difficulties with top of tread elevations and whatnot. And I did like you could basically just take a DXF or DWG of basically a side profile of an extrusion, turn that into more or less a bent plate profile, and then just extend that to the length of the tread. So now I can very, very quickly model those in. It saves us a lot of time with stair modeling and stair geometry. Outside of that, everything is just speed and workflow stuff with connections. Like that connection grouping thing you showed me, that's extremely helpful. When I'm sending connections for the engineer to review or to take a quick snap, I can just bundle everything together and package everything in nice little silos. Save them a lot of time, like I said. So if you work on the SIA side of things, this is kind of a precursor to that. So there's a lot to be excited for.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. I think that that's a great summary here. Max, I just want to say thank you for joining us here. Thank you for sharing the story of Endres Manufacturing, how you're using SDS2, what makes you all successful using SDS2. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks a ton.